Welcome to The Explainer. So have you ever wondered why some businesses seem to last forever, for generations, while others, packed with brilliant people, just fall apart? Well, today we're diving into a framework that looks way beyond strategy, into something much deeper, this idea of a company's moral memory.
Okay, let's kick things off with this powerful idea from our source material. Think about it. We've got more tech, more data, more sheer brain power than at any point in history. And yet, so many of our businesses feel incredibly fragile, right? It's like our own systems are just buckling under the pressure.
And that, right there, leads us to the big question for this whole explainer. It's the thing that probably keeps founders and CEOs up at night, even when the quarterly numbers look fantastic. What is going on? Why do our smartest strategies so often end up creating organizations that feel, well, hollow and ethically weak?
What we're really talking about here is what the source calls the modern business paradox. On one hand, our businesses are just over-engineered, full of complex systems, processes, KPIs. But on the other hand, they are completely under-civilized when it comes to things like character, trust, and resilience.
And you can see the symptoms of this decay all over the place. There's this relentless focus on short-term profit that completely wipes out any sense of long-term consequence. You know all those ESG initiatives? They just become this big checkbox exercise, not a real conviction. We have leaders who are analytically brilliant, super high IQ, but low on actual wisdom. And our obsession with moving fast just means we crash and burn that much quicker.
So, if that's the problem, what's the fix? What's the antidote? Well, the argument here is that we're missing an entire operating layer in how we think about business. And it's a concept that comes from Indian philosophy called Samskara.
So what is Samskara? Simply put, it's the buildup of conditioning inside an organization. It's all the little impressions left behind by every thought, every intention, every action, repeated over and over again. Think of it like the deep grooves in a record. It determines your company's default behavior, especially under pressure. It's the real culture, the one that shows up when no one's watching.
And this comparison just nails the difference. What we usually call culture, the slogans on the wall, the values in the employee handbook, that stuff's pretty superficial. Samskara is what actually happens. It's not about your declared values. It's about the behaviors you're willing to tolerate. It's not in the policy manual. It's in the conditioned habits that just kick in automatically when things get tough.
And here is the absolute core of the argument. This is why so many business transformations totally fail. They try to change the structure, the org chart, the 5-year plan, but they don't touch the underlying conditioning. You just can't slap a brilliant new strategy on top of a toxic foundation and expect it to work. You have to go deeper and consciously build a better one.
So this really forces us to see our companies in a totally different way. A business isn't some machine you can just optimize and tweak. No, it's more like a living organism. It has its own memory, its own habits, maybe even its own trauma.
And just like any living thing, it goes through a life cycle. It all starts at its birth, right? The founder's intent, their values, that forms the very first layer of samskara. But then, as the company grows, that intent gets tested, and if you're not consciously maintaining it, decay starts to set in. It doesn't show up in the financials at first, but in the cynicism, the shortcuts. The only way to survive is through renewal, a deliberate, conscious reset of the company's core conditioning.
And the scary part? This toxic conditioning almost never arrives with a big announcement. It just quietly seeps in. A founder's own personal insecurity can scale up and become a company-wide culture of micromanagement. An obsession with growth at all costs starts to normalize cutting ethical corners. And unexamined success? That can easily breed a dangerous kind of arrogance, creating massive blind spots that leave the whole organization vulnerable.
Okay, so if we can't just strategize our way out of this mess, what do we actually do? How do we proactively build this moral memory? How do you engineer good samskaras right into the DNA of your company? Well, thankfully, the source gives us a really clear 4-step playbook. In step 1, it starts with the leader's own inner work, because a company can never outgrow its leadership. Step 2, hire for character first, then train for competence. You can teach skills, but integrity is much harder to install later. Third, change the very filter you use for making decisions. Ask not just, can we do this, but what's the long-term impact of this on everyone? And finally, fix your reward systems. Make it crystal clear that how you get the results is just as important as the results themselves.
And look, this isn't just some high-level philosophical idea. This principle of consciously conditioning your organization's character, it's the invisible engine behind some of the most respected and long-lasting companies in the world. Their legacies were absolutely not an accident.
Let's look at a real-world titan of this idea, the Tata Group from India. If you ask what their most valuable asset is, it's not a steel mill or a software company.
It's trust. And that trust has been built over 150 years.
Now, that trust didn't come from a clever marketing campaign. It was conditioned, decade after decade, by making decisions where they chose ethical restraint over easy short-term opportunism. They consistently took short-term hits to protect their long-term reputation. And they even embedded this idea of nation-building right into their core business strategy.
And it's not just Tata either. You see these same kinds of deep cultural roots in other legendary companies, like Patagonia and Toyota.
This table breaks it down so well. For Patagonia, environmental responsibility isn't just a mission statement. It's a business model that literally tells people not to buy too much and offers lifetime repairs. For Toyota, respect for people isn't a poster on the wall. It's a system that empowers any worker on the assembly line to stop production if they see a problem. That deep conditioning, that becomes a competitive advantage that nobody can copy.
And so, this all brings us to the final and most critical takeaway. The source urges leaders to stop just asking, is it working? And to start asking a much, much deeper question. With every single decision, every hire, every little behavior that we tolerate, what is this organization becoming?
The ideas we've been exploring in this explainer were adapted from the insightful work of the Meda Foundation. And it's just a powerful reminder that the businesses that truly last, the ones that build real legacies, they don't just build great products, they consciously build great character.